The debt ceiling deal got through the House vote on Wednesday and now faces the Senate for approval. The details of the deal, including 2-year spending caps, cuts in IRS funds, extending the debt limit until 2025, are well known. However, there's a lot more nuance to this deal than some might think. Joining us now is Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman to break it all down for us. So, Rick, what might people be missing here?
Well, the good news, obviously, is that we're not going to have any kind of default where the Treasury cannot pay its bills, assuming this gets through the Senate, which looks relatively easy compared with getting it through the House. But guess what? This is going to have basically no meaningful impact on reducing future annual deficits or the total amount of federal debt, which is now about $31.5 trillion. Those numbers are just going to keep going up. We're going to have more debt, more debt, more debt going into the future. And this is going to do absolutely nothing, really, to change the long-term trajectory of the federal debt. So what kind of deal is this? This seems to be way more drama than is warranted for what this bill is actually going to do, which is just cut spending by maybe $120 billion a year out of nearly $5 trillion federal spending spree. And it could be a lot less because some elements of this bill can actually be rolled back by future legislation. So it's just not going to make much of a difference.
And so then what does this mean for some of Biden's other plans? We know at one point, he wanted to have a bigger tax on the wealthy and on corporations. What does this do to some of those plans?
Well, obviously, Biden is not going to get any of his preferred legislation through the current Congress because Republicans control the House of Representatives. But he actually got a lot done during those first 2 years. So what Biden's going to do for the rest of his first term, or perhaps for the rest of his only term, depending on how things go next year, he's just going to be implementing the Inflation Reduction Act, which is all those green energy incentives. That actually is really taking off. And there is going to be a lot at stake in 2025. So that is the year that the Trump tax cuts from 2017, a lot of those tax cuts, especially the ones for individuals, those actually expire at the end of 2025. Huge question what to do about that. There are going to be other big things, including some decisions that Congress is going to have to make about this Fiscal Responsibility Act, as it's somewhat misleadingly called, that Congress is apparently going to pass pretty soon to get through this debt ceiling problem. Some of those decisions, whether to continue spending cuts and so on, or just abandon them, that's going to come in 2025 as well. So we're not going to see much important congressional activity this year or next, but 2025 is going to be a huge year.
And so, and as we've been talking about this debt limit, this was more about money that had already been set aside and spent by the US government. But a lot of these other big budget decisions still sort of got the can kicked down the road. What are the expectations there? What do you think might be some of the biggest fights when it comes to the budget coming up?
Well, just for perspective, these spending cuts that are contained in this current bill are only addressed at 15% of the federal budget, which means 85% of all federal spending is basically off limits, according to this bill. So, I mean, we've been saying this, literally for years and years. There's going to come a point where we're going to have to deal with the fact that Social Security is going to start paying out more money than it's taking in. Same is going to happen with Medicare. And it's looking like that we're now inside the 10-year window for that. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to wait until those programs are both at a crisis point? I think the answer is yes. I don't think Congress is going to do anything about either of those programs until there's no choice. And the reason is that the choices stink. The way you're going to solve the problem that we're just not going to have enough money to pay everything in the future, you're either going to have to cut benefits or you're going to have to raise taxes. Both very unpopular, but that's what's going to happen. So because those are bad, unpopular political moves, we are not going to get there until the very last minute, much as happens every time we go through one of these debt ceiling drills. So I guess in a way, this stupid debt ceiling drama where we have to contemplate the possibility that Treasury is going to run out of money, maybe this is actually good practice for the bigger battles that are coming in the next 5 to 10 years.
Indeed, and all ahead, of course, with a presidential election to keep an eye on as well. So a lot at stake there politically for both sides. A big thank you there for breaking that down for us, our very own Rick Newman.